So this feels like a real rock station. I get into some stations, they're so clinical. I mean, they're just, you go, is this a dentist office or a...
What a great pleasure it is to welcome back to WMMR Old Black Eyes himself, Mr. Alice Cooper.
Thank you, Monsieur Pierre.
So nice to have you. So the moniker Old Black Eyes obviously comes after Frank Sinatra's Old Blue Eyes.
Sure.
But when did it start being used? Do you remember?
I think it was when the Old Blue Eyes is back. When he came back with that. And of course, we just looked at that and said, well, yeah, that one's too easy.
Now, there's so many stories of you hanging out with people, but I read that you hung out with Sinatra or had some encounters with him.
Sinatra was very cool. He was one of those guys, of course, when you say anything, Sinatra's the number. He's the Beatles of his generation,
right.
And he actually did one of my songs one time. He did "You and Me" at the Hollywood Bowl. Wow. And it was, he was just one of those. He was cool.
He had the swagger.
Oh, you kidding? More than anybody.
I call him the original rock star.
He was.
Because the girls were swooning for him at the Paramount Theater back in the 40s and 50s. And, and then he just carried himself. When he took the stage, he didn't walk the stage. He took the stage. Right. And that 40-piece orchestra wailing behind him, and the drinking and the smoking and the charisma. I saw him 6 times. I loved him.
Bobby Sox. Oh, there was the Bobby Sox.
Yes.
And when he would play, it was 50 cents. A ticket.
Wow.
And, when he would come out, he was the splendid splinter. He was very thin and he had that great voice and everything. Yeah, he was really the first rock star. Yeah.
I mean, because, if you've got the charisma, whether it be him or, Little Richard or Chuck Berry or Elvis or you, if you've got that charisma, you can't hide it, you can't deny it.
And you can't teach it.
Right.
It's something, honestly, and it's not a bragging thing. It's just something you're born with. When I was 15, 16 years old, and we started the band in high school, I just felt like I belonged up there. I never knew what I was going to do for a living for the rest of my life. But as soon as I got behind that mic, I went, "Oh, this is what I do," And it was theatrical then. If I found a mop backstage, well, the mop could be a girl. It could be something you swing around. It could be a weapon. It could be so. A lot of our theater back then was all guerrilla theater. Whatever you find, you just improvise with.
It's so true, and you've done such an amazing job with that over the years. I want to talk about production in a little bit, but I was reading about your pre-show rituals, and tomorrow you'll again open the show for My Chemical Romance. And I read recently that you like to take a nap, then you get up, you have a Diet Coke, you do a meditation/prayer. I think you said you have a chocolate chip cookie, but I'm curious what the meditation or prayer is like, because you said that it's that process that transforms you into Alice.
Yeah, I think that, we always have to give honor where honor is due. I should have been in the 27 Club. I
don't know what the 27 Club is.
Well, all the people that died at 27.
Oh, of course, right.
And because I knew all those guys, Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix, and every one of them I knew, and drank with them. And I could have easily been in that club, the 27 Club. So I thank God that I was, got hold of myself. 42 years ago, I quit doing everything. I quit drinking, drugs, everything. And that's why I'm here today. In fact, any rock star that is here from that era had that moment, that come to Jesus moment of saying, okay, am I going to live or die?
It's true.
It's really it.
It's true.
And, Steven Tyler, Ozzy. Ozzy cooled everything out, or he wouldn't have lived to 76.
Right.
Look at Mick.
Mick Jagger is
he's
one
a
of
health freak.
Yeah. He runs 4 or 5 miles a show, and he's 81 years old, 82, I think.
Yeah, he's amazing. And Keith Richards, my wife has the best line about Keith Richards. She says, with all the wars and the disease and the whole thing, she says, what kind of a world are we going to leave Keith Richards?
I love that. Ozzy told me a story once about Keith. He said he was at a TV show with him, and Ozzy sits next to Keith and goes, "How you doing?" And Keith says, "Not bad for a living legend." And then Ozzy, in a very rapid wit manner, said, "Who told you were alive?" But speaking of Ozzy, it was only a couple of days after he died, you were doing the O2 Arena. and in London, so that's not too long ago, and you went into Paranoid and a special guest came out.
Yeah, we did. I was on my way in on stage in Wales, or Scotland, I think it was, going on stage, and somebody said, Ozzy just passed. And I went, it's one of those AI stories that you can never believe any of these stories. And then somebody said, no, for real, he's gone. And I went, how weird. Just 2 weeks ago, they had the big thing in Birmingham, and then they must have known. He must have known that he was, on his way. But at the same time, the O2, I said, well, we have to tip our hat, to Ozzy. Of course, he was an old 40-year-old friend for me. I've known him forever, And so I called up Johnny Depp, who's in the Vampires with me, Hollywood Vampires. And Johnny's a killer guitar player. I mean, he's a really good guitar player.
I never knew that, but it's actually quite true.
He was playing with Jeff Beck when Jeff Beck passed away. Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, you don't play with Jeff Beck unless you're a guitar player. Right. And he came up, and we never told the audience what we were going to do. At the end of School's Out, they figured, well, there's nothing else after that. The balloons and the confetti and the whole thing, and then the guitar player starts Paranoid, and the place went crazy,
So cool.
And at the end, I just said, everybody say goodnight to Ozzy.
If you had to go out, what a grand way to do so. I was so happy for him that all those artists of all different generations came in the huge audience to pay tribute to him, both his solo career and his Black Sabbath days. And I thought, what a grand way to stage, if you will.
That's right.
Theatrically, your exit. But no one knew it would be that quickly.
No, not at all.
Afterwards.
That was just really, there must have been knowledge of you don't have that much longer, And Sharon's such a great lady, and Jack, and Kelly, they're really a cool family. I felt very, very sorry, but I think at least it wasn't sudden. I think that they saw it coming and prepared for it,
We're speaking with Alice Cooper. We have the great pleasure of him here in the studio with us at MMR. So, as I said, you're opening for My Chemical Romance tomorrow at the baseball park here in South Philly. And they're doing the Black Parade, a celebration of that legendary record from, how many years ago was that?
Almost 20.
Almost 20 years ago. Yeah. And it's so cool that they're doing it, and you're opening. But when it came out, MMR's been here for a while, and I've been here for a while. I interviewed Gerard Way backstage before one of the two shows they did here in Philly. And I asked him about a variety of topics, and he, to my surprise, I didn't know what his influences were, mentions you. In fact, on stage, I've been reading that you opened the show from a hospital bed. Is that correct?
I do. That's one of my favorite parts. Because it really reminds me of Alice Cooper and that whole thing. Like, I'm a big fan of 70s, like theatrical 70s rock. And that is, to me, a straight moment from those days, where it's like, it's theater, but it's still a rock show. It's just the band. But that's one of those moments where I get up and I actually literally feel like Alice Cooper.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's I love that. I think when you can stick around for 60 years in this business and still be doing it, I'm really looking forward to this. I really like that band, that because they are that. They have a sense of humor behind it. They have a real sense of theater behind it. I think Teenagers is one of the funniest songs I've ever heard in my life. And I listened to it and I went, how come I didn't write that?
They said, oh, teenagers scared the living out of me. They can care less as long as someone will bleed. So talk in your clothes, I'll strike a violent pose. Maybe even leave you alone, but not me.
I should have written that song. I felt the same way about Teen Spirit, too.
Oh, wow.
When I heard Just Smells Like Teen Spirit, I went, oh, I missed that one. How did I miss it?
Did you ever know Kurt Cobain?
Oh, I never knew Kurt. I knew, Grohl.
Right.
When I first saw Nirvana, I looked right past the first two guys and I said, when this band breaks up, I'm getting that drummer. Because he was such a good drummer. David Grohl was such a great drummer. That's what got me first, was that. But Chemical Romance, Black Parade and all this, I went, I get it. This is really good. They're doing it. The music will always come first. When we do an album, back in those days, we were up against Zeppelin. We were up against all these bands. You better be a great live band before you even think about recording. That was the prerequisite. You had to be a great live band. So 7-hour rehearsal, 6 hours was on the music, and 1 hour on the theatrics. That came easy, and it's still like that. The music is always going to come first, and so I can see that with Chemical Romance. I can see that they really are a great live band, and then they let that flow over into the theatrics. If you're going to say "Welcome to My Nightmare," don't just say it. Right. Give them the nightmare. Right.
That's so true. And when you say we, you're talking about your original band, and this new record, "The Revenge of Alice Cooper," reunites you with them. I think first time in 51 years. You have Michael Bruce and Dennis Dunaway and Neil Smith. Glenn Buxton, unfortunately, was in the original band, and you dedicate the record to him. He passed away in '97. Yeah. But you have a couple of players who are on the record who sort of try to take his part. Who are they?
Well, especially on Black Mamba. When we did Black Mamba, I went, there's only one person that can play on this, Robbie Krieger from The Doors, because he had such a unique guitar sound. Nobody sounded like Robbie Krieger. You listen to the Doors albums, they're totally different than anybody. This song was about a snake in the girl's bed. Right? And who could play that better than Robbie? There's that slinky, snaky sound. So he was obvious. Then we found other guitar players, but we found this one guy named Yazzie, who was from Nashville. He showed up, and he's like 6 foot tall. He's got bell bottoms on and platform shoes and makeup. And I'm going, what? And he's stuck somewhere in 1974. And he plays like Glenn.
Wow.
And so he ended up being our guitar player.
That's so cool. Black Mamba opens the album, but there is a song on it, I think it's What Happened to You, that you use Glenn's parts on. And I'm wondering if in that particular song, you built the song around the parts you had of him on tape, or how that song came together to use his parts.
Pierre, it was something we couldn't do in the 70s if we had to, or 80s even. You could isolate that guitar part. The great thing was Dennis Dunaway never threw anything away. He was a hoarder of tapes. He has tapes of us in high school learning Beatles songs in my mom's, mom and dad's living room. So he says, I got this tape of Glenn and I working on a song, and we played it back, and it had this guitar part on it. And I said, let's isolate it, or Bob Ezren, and come in and write the song around that riff. Writing songs for us, everybody in the band writes. And so it was pretty easy to write a song around that riff. And the whole album is dedicated to Glenn. Right. Glenn was half W.C. Fields and half Bowery Boy. He was always, hey, that guy's such a Sid.
A Sid? What's that mean?
Well, anybody named Sidney, he figured was a jerk.
Okay, that's great.
But he was so much a Bowery Boy that it was really weird. He was a total greaser, with long hair from Akron, Ohio. So he was a unique character onto. I never heard him ever jam with anybody except Syd Barrett.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Him and Syd Barrett would sit there with electroplexes, you play the guitar through it, and it would make and they would just play things back and forth to each other,
That's amazing. What is the significance of reuniting with these guys, with Michael, Dennis, and Neil? Obviously, the Alice Cooper band, Alice Cooper was the entire band for all those first legendary records, and it wouldn't be just your picture, it would be all of them.
Right, I was just the singer.
Right. But what is the significance of getting back together with them?
This was kind of the whole story. We started in high school. We were the band that everybody hated. We were the band that nobody would hire. Everything like that. One of the reviews said I'd give them 1 week. And here we are, 60 years later, with a #1 record. And what the thing about it is we were always best friends. And we ran track and cross country together. I mean, that was before the Beatles. So when we started the band, did the whole thing like this, we did 4 albums in a row that were platinum albums with Bob Ezren. And we never took a break. And we just burned out. not with each other. We were dysfunctional though. After Billion Dollar Babies and Muscle of Love, and we didn't divorce. We just separated. So I stayed in touch with the guys all of those years, and they stayed in touch with me. Things like that. Finally, I said, what would happen if we did another album together? Nobody will expect that. And they all played as good as they ever played. And Bob Ezren goes, I have no idea what this is going to be, but let's do it.
Bob Ezren, by the way, legendary producer, musician, incredible talent, but you've used him as your producer right from the beginning.
Yeah, right from the beginning. He did School's Out, Billion Dollar Babies, Killer, Love It to Death, all those big albums. And then when I went solo, he did Nightmare, he did all those great albums. And so we accidentally made a really great 1975 record. We had no idea what was going to happen. We wrote songs. We went in, and I said, the only thing I really want to do here is not to layer this album. I want this album live in the studio. So the band played, all those songs are live in the studio. Yeah.
I love that.
And then we just took the best cut, and then I would do the vocal, and we might put a different guitar here and there. But all the basic tracks are all live in the studio.
Well, I want to play one and have you tell us about it. As I was listening to the record through several times, I like Up All Night. Tell us about that song.
Yeah, Up All Night was a song Mike Bruce kind of brought in, and I just thought it was funny to have a guy that was so egotistical, that he was. I can stay up all night. So don't even think that I'm the wimp. I'm going to be the guy that stays up all night, and it just was such a great hook on it. Mike wrote a really good hook on it, and then I got to go in and do the surgery on the lyrics, and every one of our songs is a little vignette story. That one song on there about the two serial killers.
Is it Intergalactic Vagabond Blues?
No, that's another one that...
I love that one, too.
Yeah.
I don't know what album it was or what song it is.
One Night Stand.
Okay.
And what the story on that one is the guy sees the girl, and he picks her up, and they're in bed together, and he feels the knife at his heart. Right? She's a serial killer, right? One Night Stand. What she doesn't realize is the razor blade in his hand. He's a serial killer, right? And he totally picked her. He's Dexter. He's basically Dexter. But he takes her out before and he just goes, it's one night stand, another one night stand.
So perfect. I wanted to ask you, I love album artwork. Before we started talking, we were talking about the value of records, vinyl records.
Yeah.
And as I hold this in my hand and you look, I've got the vinyl copy right here. It's done like a movie poster, like a gore movie poster. So instead of, saying Alice and the guys, it says starring Alice Cooper, Michael Bruce, Dennis Dunaway, Neil Smith, and featuring a special appearance by Glenn Buxton. And then it's got you and the rest of the band guys. And then in this creepy lettering, The Revenge of Alice Cooper, but instead of produced by, underneath it says directed by Bob Ezren, and then it has reviews.
And the reviews are funny.
The original band, 14 new songs. Is there no mercy? Says the London Post, supposedly. The Alabama Tatler says, deeply disturbing. Do we really need this? A bubonic plague. This is the Manchester Morning News. Black Death, polio, COVID, and now this. And then the bottom of the album says the return album the world was afraid of.
I went right with the old Vincent Price.
So Vincent Price,
movie posters from the '60s, and I said, well, let's go with that because we're known for horror rock. We're known for starting that, really, the whole shock rock thing, and I said, let's play tribute to that. The Revenge of Alice Cooper. The next one will probably be called The Curse of Alice Cooper.
It's so cool that you are with them, and the record sounds so good, and it's done so well. It's really
Ezrin, he was our George Martin. He was the one that really put us together. George Martin did that with the Beatles. He took all these insane ideas and he knew how to weave them together and to get rid of the stuff that didn't need to be there and to make it powerful. That's when a band has to listen to their producer. You know, a lot of bands, they get a producer, they don't listen to him. You know, if you're going to get a producer, you listen to what he has to say, because he really taught us a lot about how to do this.
Like it says on the front cover, directed by.
Yeah.
They're almost a director, really.
Well, you know, in the beginning, when we first got him after the Easy Action album, that was all Frank Zappa. You know, I mean, we that was all stuff. Frank produced the first album, and Danny Briggs produced the second one. But it was convoluted. It was everywhere. You know, and that's why Frank liked it,
right?
Because it didn't make any sense,
right?
You know, and Bob came along and said, I can make this into something without chasing the charts, on your terms, hit records. You know, and so 18 was the first record, and it was a pure punk. Didn't belong on the radio at all, and yet it was a hit.
I still live by those words today, and I'm 70 years old. I want to ask you about your legendary manager, Shep Gordon, since 1968, and the great Mike Myers documentary in 2013, Supermensch, The Legend of Shep Gordon, is such a wonderful film telling the story of the people he has managed, his rise in both entertainment and later in the restaurant world. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful example of how to promote a band, because his original idea was promoting you because you were repelling people in the early days, so he wanted to capitalize on that, right?
Absolutely. Shep and I have been together now 55 years.
Wow.
He's still managing.
That's so
He's
cool.
my best friend. And it's one of those things where we both have a great sense of absurdity, you know. And same with Bob Ezren. Bob's the same way. So that's why these three people are always going to be in play, you know. And we did see the power of parents hating us, which they already did, and kids going, "Oh, really? You hate them? I love them," you know. And we played on that. Sure, we played on that,
right?
You know. But I always looked at it and said, I mean, I love all these bands, all these Peter Pans, but where's Captain Hook? And I said, there's no villain in rock. I said, I will gladly be that villain. And so Alice Cooper became that villain.
So cool.
And it was so much fun to play the villain.
Right.
You know, back then I had to play him because I was drinking, but I was never drunk. I always had this golden buzz going on. But I looked at Alice as being like the whipping boy for the society. He was the teenage, he was the downcast out, you know, nobody wanted him. When I got sober, I went, I can't play that character like that anymore. I want to play Alice like an arrogant villain, you know, the Alan Rickman kind of, you know, condescending and looking at the audience. Oh, yes, you know. And that's how I play him now, which is so much fun. You know, the audience loves Alice being, he never talks to the audience until the very end of the show.
So in terms of, I mean, you know, you talked about in the beginning 6 hours of rehearsal, 1 hour of working on the production. The production is so fascinating because your sense of theater is so ingrained as in terms of your overall person, both as you and as Vincent and as Alice. And give us a quick overview of how the production has grown from its earliest days to what it is right now.
It's really just an extension of the personality. You know, I look at lyrics as being the script. You know, I write the lyrics, so I can certain songs I write for the stage, for Alice, because I go, oh, Dwight Fry, are you kidding? Straight Jacket, One Blue Cold Light, it's going to really be powerful. School's Out, are you kidding? That's the end of the show. That's the party. I mean, everybody's gonna. Who doesn't agree with School's Out? You know, but that's how I love to. I want the character to be the main thrust of the thing, and it's always got to be hard rock. It's going to be Detroit hard rock with a little bit of Hollywood, a little bit of horror, a little bit of this and that, and then you've got something that, like when we do this show tomorrow night, it's purely it's in your face, and you can't get your breath because we never let up.
Right.
You know, in this band, I got Nita Strauss on lead guitar and Ryan Roxy, and the band is so good that it's scary.
How long of a set do you get tomorrow?
I think we're doing a little over an hour.
Sweet.
No, we're going. No, we normally it's us and Judas Priest, and we do a co-headlining tour that's coming up later on this year. But normally we don't open. But I said, this would be great. I love that band, Chemical Romance. That's no ego thing with me at all.
Right.
I just think it'll be fun to get out in front of their audience and do this.
Speaking of ego, I saw a picture once, I don't know, Rolling Stone or somewhere, and it's of a commercial air flight. And 3/4 of the way back in coach, you're sitting there, in 3 seats on either side in the aisle in the middle, an average, American plane from one city to another. And I'm going, what is Alice doing back in coach?
Oh, that was probably way in the... actually, that might have been our jet. That might have been our jet.
This looked like a commercial airline. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well, I probably had the snake with me in a little cage next to me, because back then you could do that.
Right.
Well, and nobody wanted to sit. It wasn't me. It was the snake they were probably afraid of.
Speaking of the snake, there's a legendary story. I think it's from 1974, when in the early days, I guess it was easier to get snakes, and then there became a slight snake drought, if you will. And you were somewhere down south in Brazil, I think, and you needed a snake, and the roadie said, "No problem, we'll get you a snake." And can you explain what happened?
Well, we're doing the first rock show ever in Sao Paulo. And nobody had ever done a rock show down there. 38 million people, right? By the way, it was the Guinness Book of Records' biggest indoor concert of all time. 160,000 people indoors.
What venue?
It's a venue that's about 8 times bigger than Madison Square Garden.
Holy blank!
Yeah, enormous. And so what they said? Well, we don't allow you bringing snakes. And I go, you go out in the Amazon, they're everywhere, And I said, okay. And the guy says, we'll provide you with a snake. And I went, okay. All the snakes I've ever used have been born into captivity. I mean, they might be 13 feet long, but they have no problem being on stage. They go out in the jungle, and they take one off of a tree and put it in a bag, So when I get there, I go, before the show, I go, let me see the snake. And I opened up this bag, and this thing comes out. I mean, with its jaws open, and I grabbed it like this. I went, oh. So we had to tape its mouth shut. But it still was squeezing me, man. It wanted to kill me. And all the other snakes are great on stage. They love being up there. But this snake, 158,000 people, and it's going, this is my opening show. This is...
Well, that's a prop, and you're so used to the production, the Hollywood values and such. I'm wondering about things that didn't work on stage as it's happening.
Spinal moments,
and how you dealt with them.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that movie was about us because being trapped in the pod and can't get out. That's
right.
Always if that happens, you got to play it for comedy. So everything that has ever happened, when you're going to do something theatrical in front of an audience, worked perfectly in rehearsal until you get it on stage. And the one that was really great was we decided we've already hung Alice, we've already cut his head off, we've electrocuted him. Let's shoot him out of a cannon. So we had this cannon built, it's a gigantic cannon, and the deal was I'd go in, they'd load me into it. And, of course, I'd get out the side, and there was a dummy in there that was dressed just like me, and they would shoot it across the stage, all the way across the stadium, and then I'd
Reborn,
pop out.
right.
Yeah, I'd pop out because I was already over there.
Right.
And it worked. Okay, let's do it. Three River Stadium in Pittsburgh. Get packed. And it builds up, and it goes, kaboom! And the dummy comes out, and it just flops. At that point, you gotta go Clouseau on it.
Right.
You have to come out and go, yes, that's part of the show, of course.
Well, what did you do?
That's all I could do.
Because you're across the stage, right? Or you're...
Yeah, I came all the way back around, pulled the dummy out, and kind of kicked it away.
It just went on.
And the audience thought, well, that's the gag.
Okay.
You know?
They often don't know on a mistake unless it's glaring.
Well, we sold the Canon the next day to the Stones.
Come on!
I'm not kidding you.
Come on! Oh my God, that's priceless. We're speaking with Alice Cooper here on MMR, and it's so wonderful to have you here. I want to play another song from the new album, The Revenge of Alice Cooper, and this is one I quite like. It's called Money Screams. Tell us about that.
Yeah, money doesn't talk, it screams.
Right.
I wrote this with Neil Smith, and you know, we were talking about just different phrases like that, like money doesn't talk, you know. So I said, yeah, it doesn't. It screams. It's like it's louder than anything. And so the parody on that, of course, well, that's easy to write then, you know. It writes itself pretty much, talking about not just the evils of money, but the power of money.
You know, you're so well versed in Hollywood culture. And then, you know, I guess it was 1992 when Wayne's World comes out, and there's that legendary scene where Wayne and Garth see you and start bowing and go, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. And I have to wonder how many times after that film has come out from then to now have people said that to you, jokingly or otherwise?
Every airport.
Come on.
Almost every day. I do VIPs, you know, before a show. And the people come by it 3 times. They're on their knees, go, we're not worthy. Now, I didn't know it was going to be that much of a catch line, you know, because when we did Wayne's World, you know, I saw it on Saturday Night Live. It was a great bit, you know, and they made a movie. So Michael calls me up, you know, and he says, it'd be great, man, if you guys would. I said, okay. Well, so I was only supposed to do the song, Feed My Frankenstein.
Right.
And he says, well, he says, you could handle some lines. He says, you're an actor, right? And I go, yeah. He hands me like 5 pages of dialogue. You know, all this stuff about Milwaukee and all this stuff.
Actually, it's pronounced Milwaukee, which is Algonquin for the good land.
I was not aware of that.
And I said, when are we shooting this? And he goes, about 20 minutes. So half of the stuff that I was saying in that thing, I was just riffing.
Wow.
I was making it up as I went along. Now, if you could have seen the outtakes, here's, you know, Michael and Dana down here, and they're doing everything they can to make me laugh. And, you know, we're not worthy, we're dogs, we're this, we don't do. It went on for 10 minutes, and it got vile. You know,
Did they make you laugh?
Oh, I found a spot between them, and I delivered the lines right between them, you know, and I got through it. But it was very, you know, who knew that movie was going to be that big? Right. That movie made more money than Batman.
Come on.
No, because it didn't cost anything.
Oh my God.
It didn't cost anything, you know. So it was such a huge hit.
Well, speaking of Hollywood, I'd love you to tell us, for those who might not know about the Hollywood vampires, because it was sort of the stuff of legend back in the day, and then you brought it back. Tell us what it was, what it is.
Well, first of all, it was like I read this story about in the 40s, there were these guys that drank every day. It was W.C. Fields, Errol Flynn, you know, these characters that they would get together and they would have drink. It was a drinking club. You know, John Barrymore died, and they still propped him up and, you know, drank around.
Field says, what I'd give for one more drink with Barrymore, and they go to the funeral parlor and grab his body and prop it up and put a drink in his hand.
Right.
It's depicted in the movie with Rod Steiger. And I'm going, did that really happen?
It really
did.
happened, yes. And so our generation then at that time, every night we ended up at the Rainbow. And it was me, Harry Nilsson, Mickey Dolenz, Keith Moon, John Lennon when he was in town, the original vampires. And finally the girl just...
Would you get...
No. It had nothing about music. We were a drinking club. And so the girl there, her name was Shotzi, she was the way. She says, I'm going to put you up in this thing because everybody's going to be bothering you guys down here. So she says, I only see you at night, and all you do is drink. You're like a bunch of vampires. And I met Hollywood vampires. So that became the drinking club. All right? Now, later on, of course, when, you know, we all went back on tour and everything like that, I was doing Dark Shadows with Johnny Depp. And I mentioned that, and we kind of said, you know, it would be fun to do a bar band, just be a bar band, play bars around town, and just honor our dead drunk friends. you know, the Doors and Dave like that, you know, Jimi Hendrix and all this. And just so happened Joe Perry was there. And Joe said, I'm in. And the next thing I knew, you know, it was a band.
Wow.
We played the Roxy, and that was about 300 people, which was great. It was just great fun. Everybody showed up that night on stage. The next show was Rock in Rio, 300,000 people.
Wow.
But the band was really good. I mean, it was a production then. You know, we didn't want it to be that big, but it ended up being huge. And Johnny can play. Johnny, if you've never heard Johnny Depp play guitar, he started out as a guitar player and ended up being an actor. Yeah, but his main thing was guitar.
So, I mean, there's been gigs. Are there any plans to do that again or carry that on?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we headlined all through Europe. The band was like, you know, we played every major one of those festivals in Europe and everything, and we headlined them, you know. Right now, Johnny is doing 2 movies. So the hardest thing about the Vampires is that in that day, Joe was in Aerosmith, I've got my band, and Johnny's making movies. So we would have to say a year from now, from July to end of August, nobody take any gigs because we're going to do the Vampires. That was the hardest part, was just getting it organized, you know, so that we could actually have 2 months off to do a show. But I love that band. And here's the weirdest thing. When I'm playing Alice in my band, I play Alice. I play the character, you know. And when I'm in that band, I'm just the lead singer, which is great because I never, like I said, I never talk to the audience. When the Vampires, if we're going to do a Doors song, I tell a Doors story. If we're going to do a Who song, I tell a Keith Moon story. If we, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so it's an entirely different thing.
What was it like to hang with Keith Moon or Jim Morrison or Jimi Hendrix? I mean, the people you've hung with it's extraordinary. Because I read one interview, you don't like to talk about politics, totally understandable, or bring it into the show. But you tell one story of sitting between John Lennon and Harry Nilsson as they're arguing about politics, and you're right in the middle of it. And I'm going, holy S, I'd like to be in the middle of them talking about anything.
I was the referee.
But you've been a party to all these moments with people that they're myths almost, you know?
Yeah.
And you just hung with them. Were you ever cognizant of the fact that, holy S, I'm hanging with blank and blank and blank?
If you would have told me when we were the Spiders in Phoenix that we were even going to ever meet the Yardbirds, who were our favorite band, you know, or even be in the same room as a Beatle. Later on, when you start making records and your record's number 1 or number 2, you meet everybody. Because now you're part of the fraternity. Even though you still, I mean, if it's a Beatle, it's royalty.
Right.
And the Beatles were the nicest people I'd ever met. They were McCartney and Lennon. They were it was like you'd known them forever. So you could sit and drink with John, and it was just like you'd went to high school with him, you know. Same thing with all the guys. Sinatra was like that. Elvis was like that. I think that when the bigger they get, the less they have to, they worry about their ego.
Right.
You know, you've already done it all.
Right.
So be the nice guy. There's
an Elvis story that I read about. I don't know if it's true or not, but that at some point he gave you a loaded gun. Is that correct?
This was the story. I got a call. I was in Vegas, and I got a call. Elvis wants to meet you, 1974. Wow. And I went, wow, okay, it's Elvis. And I get there, and to the Hilton Hotel, and it's Chubby Checkers there, and Liza Minnelli and me.
What a lineup!
Yeah, and we go upstairs, and when this is not fat Elvis, this is not drugged Elvis, this is black leather Elvis. You know, in shape. He was what you look at as Elvis, and he comes walking in, man. He goes, "Hey, man, you're that kid with a snake, right?" You know, and I go, yeah. And he said, you do all that makeup and all that stuff on stage, yeah. He said, man, I dig that. That's so cool. He says, you're from Detroit, right? And I went, yeah. He said, come here, I want to show you something. So I go into the kitchen, just Elvis and I. He leaves the Memphis Mafia, in the other room. And he opens the drawer, hands me a loaded .38, Smith & Wesson 38. And he said, I'm going to show you how to take a gun out of somebody's hand. You know, so I'm standing there with a loaded 38 on Elvis, and the little devil pops up and goes, shoot him. And, of course, the little angel comes up and says, yeah, shoot him, but don't kill him. You know, by that time, the gun's on the floor. I'm on the floor. He didn't hurt me, but he showed
did karate or judo or something,
he showed me how to knock the gun out of somebody's hand and everything. And I said, what a weird thing. I'm on the floor with Elvis's boot in my throat. And I go, that's great, Elvis. That's
what an odd thing, though, that you've just met him and he goes, let me show you how I do, karate, and I'll practice on you.
Well,
and here's a loaded gun that you could point at me.
I started unloading it, and he goes, don't worry about that, man. And so anyways, then he goes, do you want to see my most prized possession? It's just me and Elvis. And I went, yeah. So we go in the other room, and go into his bedroom, close the door, and I went, wait a minute. I don't know this guy that much. Prized possession, And he sits down, and he opens a drawer, and he takes out a manila envelope, big vanilla, and he pulls out these x-rays. And I'm going, most prized possession? I thought maybe it's a picture of his baby. And he says, what happened was I was leaving the other night. He said, my boys were with me. I get in the parking lot. He says, and these 3 drunk cowboys want to fight me. He says, so I fought them. I called my boys off, and I fought all 3 of them. Broke this guy's collarbone right here. And he pulls it in. I broke the guy's ankle here, and I went, this is your most prized possession? And I realized what it was. He couldn't just go to a movie.
Right.
He couldn't just go play pool. He couldn't go to a club. He's Elvis. He's bigger than life. This was his connection to the outside world, this fight. And it was his prized possession, And I went, I never want to be this big,
right?
Where you have no freedom. If I told you, Pierre, I'm going to give you the biggest mansion, you can have anything you want. All the food, all the drugs, all the girls, you can have anything you want, but you can't leave the mansion. You will find a way to kill yourself. You'll either eat yourself to death, you'll drug yourself to death, you'll die of an STD, something. But the unnatural thing that you can't have any freedom will actually kill you. And that's happened to Michael Jackson.
Right.
Same thing with Michael.
To a lot of
you
artists.
get so big you can't move.
Right.
I said that's not living. I mean, I go to the mall. I do everything.
There's so many cool people that you've interacted with, and Groucho Marx and Salvador Dali comes to mind, and Vincent Price, as we've touched on. But one of them was the legendary, sassy, beautiful blonde actress by the name of Mae West, with all those priceless one-liners. How did you get to know Mae West?
I'll tell you there's a million Keith Moon stories. I'll tell you the greatest one. Because I could tell you 100, Harry could tell you 100, He was certifiable.
Right.
The best drummer I ever heard in my life, but, and the nicest person. So anyways, there's a movie comes along. She wrote a play in the 20s called Sextet. And she actually got arrested. And they put her in jail, but they painted the jail cell pink, and they put a big pink bed in there. It was a great publicity story. Anyway, she decides she's going to make this into a musical. She's 86 years old, all right? And I get this thing. She wants to know if you want to play an Italian waiter. And I went, yeah, of course I do, And I said, who else is in the movie? They said, Ringo, Keith Moon, Timothy Dalton,
wow,
George Raft.
Come on.
And Dom DeLuise. And I went, I'm in. Because I know it's going to be a comedy, so it's going to be good. So anyways, I'm doing this piano thing with her, and I'm singing this song with her and everything. It ends. Cut. Okay. And she goes, why don't you come on back to my trailer? And I go, Mae, you're 86 years old, and I'm not sure if you're a woman. And she goes, oh, I'm all woman. So I'm telling this story at lunch, and all the guys are there. And Timothy Dalton says, she came on to me too. And Ringo goes, me too. And they all got to Keith Moon, and he goes,
oh, no.
And we all looked and went, no way.
Come on.
And he just goes,
Keith hooked up with Mae West.
At 86 years old.
Did she really talk that way in regular
talked
conversation?
Just like that.
Wow.
She was, oh, yeah, come on over there.
there's so many great one-liners with her. Speaking of Hollywood, I think you were a neighbor of this great gentleman. I interviewed him once. He couldn't have been nicer. And in January of 1997, he put out an album called In a Metal Mood, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And I speak of Pat Boone. We've got a little clip. Do you have a little clip we can play for Alice?
No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more Mr. Clean. No more Mr. Nice Guy. They say he's sick, he's obscene.
That's so good.
Were you a neighbor of his, or
He was just one of those guys. You know, this guy never had a problem making fun of himself.
Right.
So we're at the American Music Awards show, and they said, you're going to introduce Pat Boone with this metal album. And so I dressed all in like a suit with white bucks. Wow. He comes out in all leather.
Wow.
He's got nipple rings. This is Pat Boone. And I introduced
Pat Boone
him.
being a Christian staple, and
He's so funny. And I said, here's the future of heavy metal. And he did an Ozzy song. He did an Alice song, and he was great. This guy has got such a great sense of humor, and he has no problem making fun of himself. But he was, did you hear that? That was pretty cool.
it was great orchestration on
I
that.
love that stuff.
There have been some cool covers that people have done of you. Do you have a favorite?
I heard a version of Dio did Welcome to My Nightmare. And it was one of the only versions where I went, that's really good. He really understood what that song was. But another one was Daltrey doing No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yes.
And he gets done with it and he goes, man, he says, that song just feels really easy for me to do. And I said, well, it should be. It's Substitute. It's basically based around the song Substitute from The Who. And he goes, oh, yeah.
That's great. No More Mr. Nice Guy. I wanted to ask you about a couple of awards. One of them was a Hollywood Walk of Fame. I think that was 2003. You got a star on the walk, rightfully deserved. Where is it located?
It's right in front of the Roosevelt Hotel.
Okay.
And which is the most haunted hotel on the planet.
Right.
Which was kind of a great thing there. And, I know that there's probably gum on it right now and somebody threw up on it and, because you're on the street in Hollywood Boulevard. But that's really to me, when I got to Hollywood, I knew I was going to meet all the rock stars. But I wanted to meet Groucho. I wanted to meet Fred Astaire. I wanted to meet the real stars. The ones that I watched all my life. Luckily, Groucho came to one of the shows.
He came to an Alice show?
He came to an Alice show, and he saw it as vaudeville.
Right.
When Dali came to the show, he saw it as surrealism.
The great painter Salvador Dali.
Yeah, and so they all have their different interpretation. But when Groucho, he says, he goes, and the next time we're playing, I look at the side of the stage, and there's Groucho, George Burns, and Jack Benny.
Oh, my God.
And they're watching the show, and they're going, and they're not fazed by it at all because it's vaudeville to them. Wow. And George Burns is going, Gracie and I, we worked with the guy that did the guillotine like that. And, and I'm just going, this is great. The next time I come back out, there's 5 more guys over here that he brings in, all vaudevillians. Wow. And they loved the show. Because it was pretty much what they did. Right. It was music and a bit to go with each song.
That's so amazing. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, when was that? 2011, I think?
I think so.
And what did that mean to you?
Well, first of all, the crazy thing was everybody thought I was already in the Hall of Fame. Even people in the Hall of Fame thought I was already in. So when the name came up on the thing, everybody went, are you kidding? And so we got it. We never expected that ever to get in the Hall of Fame, because it's humbling. It's not an ego thing. It's humbling. And you get up there and I said, if I ever get tired of the Pete Townsend power chord or the Jeff Beck lead guitar solo or any of that, I said, then I got to quit. I said, but I will never get tired of that. I said, so we'll go on. We're lifers. We're going to go on till we can't go on anymore.
And you were with the original band then,
Original
too, right?
band, yeah. And it was really great to see the original guys get up there and play. Here was a little side story that was just heartbreaking, but at the same time really cool. When, on the kids that sing on School's Out, no more pencils. The kids that were on stage were all terminal.
Oh, wow.
And they had so much fun. We were the ones that were going, is there anything we can do for you? Da, da, da. And they're going, yeah, can we wear the makeup? Can we wear the makeup and all? And it was so touching that those kids were not terrified of they knew that they were terminal. And yet this was going to be the most fun thing they ever did. Wow. Sing Schools Out on TV at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. For us, we were we're falling over ourselves trying to do something for them,
That's priceless. One more thing, you're going to be inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame. You've had a radio show for how many years now? 23 years. That's so cool. And you're going to be inducted this year into the Radio Hall of Fame.
I didn't expect that one at all.
I love that, though.
Dick Clark came to me, and he said, 25 years ago, and he said, if you had a radio show, what would it be? And I said, I would take it back to 1968 San Francisco FM radio, where the DJ talk about what he wants to talk about, play what he wants to play.
That's where I started at KSAN.
Exactly it.
Yeah.
That's why I connected that with you, And he said, well, let's see what happens. And so we did Nights with Alice Cooper. There was a playlist, but he said, you can go off the playlist. So I could play Zappa, I could play Iggy, I could play anything I want. I could play Laura Nero if I wanted to, and it worked. It just worked for 20 years. Then somebody bought the whole package station. We went off the air for about 6 months, and then somebody bought it back. And I said, well, let's not do Nights with Alice Cooper anymore. Let's do Alice's Attic. Mm. So now we can throw some theatrics into it.
Nice.
People come up into Alice's Attic, like Wolfman Jack, and that's when radio, you can do theater on radio. If you just...
Theater of the mind.
That's exactly it.
It's like reading a book versus watching a television or a movie. When you read the book, you create these characters in your head.
Exactly. And so I want the audience to feel every night like they're coming up into Alice's attic. Well, what's up there? There's a doll that talks and says things like, children's tears taste like sorrow. And I go, okay. That's my daughter, Calico. All these characters are up there, and that makes it a little theater. They play all the right music and then the theatrics, and it works.
Well, you're so deserving of it. Congratulations. Two more
Thank you.
areas of brief conversation. I can't let you go without asking you about golf. We had a golf tournament some years ago, and I don't know how we got you, but you agreed to come out, and you played at some suburban course with, we were broadcasting live. There's a picture outside in the hallway of me interviewing you from a golf cart, and God bless you, you were, there was some people who had been drinking all day, and you were in a foursome with a couple of these guys. I'm going, we should have tried to get him in a more sober foursome.
I haven't had a drink in 42 years, but I'm around it all the time. Right. It doesn't bother me one bit.
But and you did so well though. You actually stayed for the awards thing afterwards because I don't know what category you won, but you won a couple of categories that particular day.
Well, I'm a 4 handicap. But
is that good? I don't know anything about golf.
I was a scratch player then. That means I was even. I could shoot even par on any golf course. That man, I played tournaments with Tiger Woods. I played tournaments and those things like that, celebrity tournaments. It's just that I play 7 days a week. That was when I quit drinking. I had to find an addiction that wasn't going to kill me. All my other addictions were killing me. So golf. I said, I was a good baseball player. I should be able to hit a golf ball. And it's the most addictive sport on the planet. I call it the crack of sports.
Really?
Yeah, because you get 2 or 3 good shots and you're going to be there the next day. And it just so happened that was a perfect sport for touring. Because you're in Wichita on a Tuesday. What are you going to do all day? You're going to go to the mall again? So I said, go. So I had to be a closet golfer. Because kids did not want Alice Cooper playing golf. Because their dads played golf.
Right. We had your guitar player on last night on our evening show with Jackie Bam Bam, and he was talking about golfing with you. I forget which member
Roxy,
of the band. Yeah.
Brian.
And he said, well, we wake up, we go to the golf course, and we eventually get to the show. We do the show, and then we get on the bus and we play cards.
That's right. We play poker every night. Yeah. It's sort of like a rhythm. You have to be able to navigate the road. I mean, if you're going to be out there for 100 cities, I look forward to it. And my wife
doesn't overwhelm you.
No. My wife is in the show also. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary.
That's so great.
Coming up. But she was with Joffrey Ballet. She is an amazing dancer. And she plays all these great characters. She plays Marie Antoinette in this one. And she cuts my head off, of course, you know. But she loves the road as much as I do. So when I go on the road, I don't have to leave home. I bring home with me.
Right.
You know, she's great. She's the most fun person in the world to ever be with. But you get up in the morning. Well, first of all, you finish the show that night in, say, St. Louis. The next show's in Louisville. You get on the bus, play poker for about a half an hour, right? Go to bed, get to the next city at, say, 5 in the morning, check into the hotel, have breakfast, play 9 holes. And Callaway sets up all of our golf, the Callaway Golf Company. They set up all of our golf. We're done at 10 o'clock. So you have still the rest of the day, you know, and but you did that. You know, you felt like you got up and did something.
Right.
And then, you know, go have lunch, go shopping with your wife, whatever you're going to do. Take the new drug is nap, by the way.
I'm there with you. I love
and
naps.
And it's young guys too. They get it. It was a fact. Instead of taking speed, take an hour and a half nap. It's just like speed because you wake up and you feel great.
Right.
And then you're ready for the show. Because at 77, if I have to be physically in really good shape to do an hour and a half of every song's got a bit in it, you know, and there's no stop.
Right. One last thing before we let you go. I read this quote, and I just loved it. And you talk about the artists that we've lost and the fact that you're still here. And you go, when you think of the artists that we've lost over the years, we might not be surprised by some of them that we've lost. But you said, quote, I am enjoying life. I'm enjoying life. So many of my brothers in rock are now dead and in the ground. I'll keep going till I'm too fat, stupid, and stooped over to perform.
Well, that's the good news is it's all my hair. It's not really this color, but it's all my hair. And that's the good. And honestly, I've never lost the love of it. You know, when you're on stage and the curtain's down, you got the top hat on, you got the makeup on, you know you've got the best band out there. And when that curtain opens and that first chord hits, you're alive. I mean, you can't, there's nothing like it. If you have a toothache, if you have the flu, it goes away. For that hour and a half, the adrenaline kills everything. And you feel amazing. If you're sick, I said, the best you're going to feel all day is going to be on stage. And as soon as the show's over, you're sick again. But so what? So what? You know, but that 90 minutes of the audience knowing every song and loving the whole thing, and then on top of it, the theatrics. You get to do all these theatrics on top of it. Well, I mean, it's impossible to ever get bored with an Alice Cooper show.
So you'll keep going.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, I'm a lifer.
Because you tour a lot. You don't have to work as much as you do.
You don't. Well, first of all, none of the guys that are touring now, we could have retired 25 years ago financially. No, that's not even the point. Why is Dylan still doing 200 shows a year? Why is, you know, anybody that's out there, we're doing it because we love it. I mean, to me, if I have a month off, I start getting antsy. I start going, come on, what's the next show? When's the next show?
We're going to close with School's Out. I mean, you play it. It's the closing of the show, almost every concert. What would you say about it that you might not have said about it before?
Well, first of all, we had no idea it was going to be the national anthem. I get emails from China, from, you know, Iraq, places like that going, last day of school, man, they're playing the song, you know. And we had no idea it was going to be that. But it is the national anthem for every kid. An anthem is a song that still works if you listen to My Generation right now, the song, play it to a 16-year-old kid, and he goes, "Oh, that's me." I relate to that song. It
I'm
still
18
works.
still works for
I'm
me, as we
18.
said earlier.
Exactly. So that song ended up being, if you really listen to it underneath, it's got a lot of Yardbirds in it.
It's so great. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on MMR. You are a great gift, and you are, I think, a national treasure. And we're so thrilled to have you back in the Philadelphia area, and to have a visit with us on MMR is quite special. Thank you.
Just, we've been playing Philly for so long, and the audiences here are rock audiences. So, I mean, tomorrow night will be incredible, and Chemical Romance, it'll be really a great show.
Excellent. Thank you, Alice.
Okay, thank you, man.